These airless balls are incredibly cool, and with new filaments they're actually quite usable. You can print one for yourself, but today we're answering the question, can you actually print them and sell them for profit? We're going to look over time, money, difficulty, and legality. Yes, I know there's been a bunch of videos about these 3D printed airless balls, but that's why we're approaching it from a different point of view, printing for profit. But first, let's talk about this moustache. And according to the comments, some people don't seem to know exactly why I'm growing it. Let me make it clear that it's for charity, and my Movember page is linked below. And thanks to very generous donations, we've already surpassed $1,000. But speaking of money, can we turn a profit from printing and selling these? All of this starts with Wilson, who are the supplier of the official NBA basketball, doing some marketing with the airless Gen 1. I've linked this site below and you can watch their little teaser. But basically, this was a 3D printed ball. As the name implies, it was completely airless with holes that you can see through to the inside. Now the thing about this was, it was a limited edition, with only 75 being made, and the cost of those was $2,500 US. And as you can see, that's quite a markup on the regular official NBA ball, which is 200 US. So unless you were a super popular influencer, there was no realistic chance of the average person being able to buy and try one of these out. But the 3D printing community didn't want to be left out and started creating their own, like you see in this video by Joel, the 3D printing nerd. The trouble was, when printed in TPU, they just didn't bounce. TPU might be tough and flexible, but it's just not elastic. But Joel and others also tested with rigid filaments like PLA, which seemed to bounce pretty well, but the trouble was they just didn't have the durability. So we were stuck for a while due to a lack of proper material, but filament manufacturers have been cooking with good results. BQ sent me this filament and some other products free of charge that they told me I needed to make this ball. But in this video we're going to look at them honestly to see the ones you need and the ones where you can save money. I wasn't excited enough about this to make my own video until I saw this one from Uncle Jesse. His results looked excellent, and there's just something really intriguing about this ball that makes you want to give it a go yourself. So I got to thinking, could it be profitable to print these and then sell them? The first ingredient is BQ's new PLA HR flexible 3D printed filament. This has been created just for these airless balls, but it is kind of expensive at $60 US a kilo. They also sent me a 3MF file for Orca Studio with all of the settings and the model in place. But where did this model come from? If you search, you'll find a lot of stuff. Some of it appears to be quite strange, like this airless triangle. But as far as I can tell, there's two leaders in creating legitimate airless balls that work. The first of those is Party Lime, who at the time of recording has 13 generations of airless basketballs. So clearly there's been a lot of design and development, and the latest generation 13 is the one that you'll see me print. The other is Make It Lab, who not only has airless basketballs, but airless balls for other sports too. And the beauty of Make It Lab is they have a YouTube channel and there's a lot of videos showing the testing and development. Back to the pre-prepared 3MF, and if you're looking for your own copy, head to the link I've put below for MakerWorld, where you'll find the 3MF all set up ready to go, as well as a description explaining the ball and going through all of the settings. And the first thing I did was zoom in and admire this model. As we can see, there's actually multiple layers to this ball. It's not just an outer shape with these cutouts. And we can also see we have some contours where the seams sit a little bit recessed from the rest of the surface, mimicking a regular leather ball. Honestly, the design and engineering here is next level. As you can see, this is set up for a Bambu Lab X1 carbon with a 0.6mm nozzle. But I only had a 0.4, so BQ also sent me their Panda Revo X1 carbon hot end kit. As you can see, even on sale, this is pretty expensive. Especially when you consider, on top of the base kit, you still need to pay extra for the 0.6mm nozzle. I am running Revo on 2 other printers and I am a fan, but if you're not frequently changing your nozzle, the cheapest way to increase the size is to get a factory hot end from Bambu Lab. The other thing BQ sent me was a set of their new Cryo Grip beds. The whole idea of these is they'll grip filament without having a very high bed temperature. With the right settings, they do actually work quite well with this filament, but other options exist which I'll show you later. So let's move on to printing, and I did make a few mistakes, so I'd like to share what I did wrong so you can avoid them. To handle, this filament feels quite a bit like TPU, just more elastic. If we take a length and bend it, we can see that it flings back almost like a rubber band. Pushing the point by bending it right back on itself shows that it does spring back, but it doesn't quite have the memory of something like silicon. I firstly decided to try loading this into the AMS, and at first everything seemed to be okay, as it was just rigid enough to push in, be grabbed, and then trigger the auto loading sequence. I told the printer that this was a form of PLA just so it would let me use it in the AMS. And with 0.6mm Revo nozzle in place, without changing any of the actual filament settings, I changed the filament type to PLA, and that would get rid of the error that the Bambu Lab AMS will give. But you know what, there's a reason why you're not meant to use regular flexible filaments inside the AMS, and that became apparent when I had a jam not long into the print. So I switched to an external spool feeding directly into the top corner. My second failure came from the choice of bed when I originally went for the Wham Bam carbon fibre bed. It started peeling off pretty early in the print, so I caved and fitted the BQ Glacier plate. Unsure at the time, I left the temperatures on 80 for the first layer and 55 for all others, and you'll see the effect this had shortly. One thing that's hard to notice is that the door is slightly ajar as per BQ's instructions. From here, the printing of the ball actually went quite smoothly, but that didn't stop me from fussing over it, as at 50 hours this is the longest 3D print I've ever done. I know plenty of people don't like the Bambu Lab cloud connectivity, but I found checking in via webcam incredibly useful as I ran this print over a whole weekend. Eventually it was done, and I quite excitedly removed it from the printer. The first job was to remove the ball from the bed, and getting off the prime lines proved a little tricky. Those higher bed temperatures made the filament stick way too well, and there was no way it was going to come loose with regular flexing. Instead, I needed to use a flat blade to go around the perimeter and break the edge adhesion of the support material. Only then could I begin to pry the plate off the bottom of the ball, and trust me, quite a lot of force was needed to do this. All up, through a combination of cutting and then aggressive peeling, it took me around 10 to 15 minutes to finally remove the ball from the plate. And when I finally did, there was still a chunk of filament that needed to be cut off the bed. And it's hard to see, but in that area it left behind some slight orange discoloration. From here, the real task began of removing the support material. The best technique I found was to get a set of needle nose pliers, push them between the gaps in the support, and then twist to lever it off. This job did get easier the further along I went, simply because there was more to grab onto. Apart from at the very bottom of the ball, where there were a couple of stubborn sections that needed a blade to separate cleanly. And once the main support material was off, there were still a few sections underneath where it lingered, and I had to use a blade to slice it off cleanly. The good news is this filament is easy to cut, so a blade or side cutters are both easy to use. After this, there were still a few filament lisps loose around the ball. I cut off the largest ones, and used a blowtorch to remove the finest. All up, my post-processing took me around half an hour. So what about performance? You're only going to have angry customers demanding a refund if the ball is a dud. Let's start with the weight of the ball, and if we zero our scales, we can put on this ball and see that it comes in at 631 grams. That compares to 617 grams for a cheap outdoor ball and 595 for a better quality outdoor ball. Two things to note, an NBA ball should be up to 620 grams, so it's only just over this. And if using Party Lime's 3MF, the ball should be a little bit lighter than the one I used from BQ. Bounce test versus those same two balls. We can see the cheap outdoor ball is probably overinflated, and accordingly, the printed ball bounces quite a bit lower than it. Now let's compare versus a higher quality indoor ball. And the airless ball bounces a little bit less, but it's really not too much. It's an amount of bounce that only takes a few seconds to adjust to, and both my son and I had no trouble dribbling it without the feeling that it wasn't springing back to our hand properly. One thing to note is how quiet this ball is compared to a standard ball. I feel that is a novelty and selling point. Despite it getting dark, we were keen to test and let the goats out to have a go on our backyard rim. Now this isn't the ideal setup because most of the base is grass, but the ball bounced surprisingly well on this surface. I started testing to see how well the ball went off the backboard, and especially how well it spun off the backboard. As you can see, you can get quite a lot of spin from the opposite side, and there's plenty of grip and bounce off the backboard. It feels really good. The goats were getting serious, so I thought I should too, seeing if this ball had a good feel with a variety of dunks. And I'm pleased to report these felt unreal. You don't need an air basketball to get air time, and I was even able to do my signature dunk where I comb my moustache on the way up before slamming it down. But even for those less advanced dunks, this ball did a fantastic job. The next day, my son had a proper basketball game, so I took the opportunity to try out the ball on a proper court and backboard. Again, it feels completely normal to shoot and bank the ball with. It does feel slightly more solid and heavy from that extra weight, but again, you get used to it really fast. All of the boys on my son's team, plus some of the ones on random teams, knew exactly where the ball was, and they were desperate to hold it, have a go, and see how it felt. Again, the feedback was it felt slightly heavy, but beyond that, they loved it. I even had parents of the other kids asking me about the ball. A few days later, we took it to an outdoor court to see how it would feel there. The bounce on the concrete surface was consistent and predictable, and it felt just like a normal ball when interacting with the ring and backboard. Only that one complaint, just a little bit heavier that needs a few shots to adjust to. So how did the ball hold up? Well, the surface on the bottom where the support was touching was more abrasive from the start, and after using the ball on concrete, the surface is a little scuffed up, but really it's quite minimal. This thing shows no signs of breaking from being bounced. Overall, I would say the durability is fantastic. I think this basketball is definitely saleable, maybe with a disclaimer to say it feels a little bit different, but you will get used to it. But what about other balls? As we saw earlier, there's a few of these airless balls around to choose from, so how do they compare? Firstly, I went for this airless soccer ball by Overture 3D. There was a couple to choose from, but I selected this one because of the awesome surface design. To print this, we can take the original 3MF, delete the basketball from the plate, and load in the new STL in its place and have all of the settings preserved. The original basketball 3MF has support applied to the painted areas only. But when I tried to recreate this, it didn't go so well because it was impossible to not paint some of the areas on the inside and then support was applied throughout. I did find a solution, and that's that if you start a section view when painting support, click the top and then click reset direction. Before spinning the camera back to the bottom, you can then adjust the slider so only the bottom portion of the ball is showing. From here, we can switch to the fill tool and then use a single click to select the regions you would like support applied to. This does a great job of controlling the support area and getting rid of those errors. The other change I made was lowering the bed temperature down to 40 degrees throughout. At only 27 hours, I started this print with a lot more confidence. And the next day, I had a shiny soccer ball waiting for me. This time, without needing a blade, the ball peeled straight off, so 40 degrees is definitely the value to use. For support removal, I went for my same technique of grabbing with pliers and then trying to pry it off, but this time it didn't come so easily, and it seems that either because of the increase in temperature as I was printing this, or maybe a variation in the black coloured filament, the layer adhesion seemed a little stronger, and this support was harder to remove. Surface quality on the overhangs was also not as good. Overall, this print seemed to me like it was printed a little bit hot. So how about weight? A size 5 ball comes in at 428 grams, and this printed version at 436, so very close. The bounce, however, was noticeably less than the real ball, and probably because this design doesn't have that double layer structure. Still, we wanted to give it a proper test, so we took it to the park to compare versus the proper ball. You can actually kick this ball, but honestly it feels quite strange. Here's a longer distance kick, giving it everything I've got, and we can see that the printed ball makes it about half as far. And on top of that, it hurts your foot to kick it this hard as well. Furthermore, a regular soccer ball can be controlled by adding spin that will give it swerve and dip, whereas the airless ball doesn't seem to react like that at all. We couldn't get it to do anything except go straight. Whereas the airless basketball feels different to a regular basketball, you can adjust to it within a minute or so. Whereas this soccer ball feels too different and I don't think you would ever adjust. Therefore, I don't think this one is worth selling. Happy Thanksgiving to my viewers in North America, and to celebrate that, I thought I would also try this American football by Engineerically. I tilted it sideways and up 45 degrees and did my same trick with the support material placement. At 95% scale, this one uses around 350 grams of filament and takes just under 16 hours. Again, the Glacier bed did a great job at 40 degrees Celsius, peeling off without leaving anything behind in a matter of seconds. Support material was removed the same way as before, and just like the soccer ball printed in this black filament, the settings for this one seemed a little hot, as evidenced by the poor quality on the downwards facing layers. It was very hot while I printed this, but not even leaving the printed door completely open seemed to alleviate this. This means there was a fair amount of post-processing required for cleanup, but one thing that couldn't be cleaned up was a layer shift that happened on the last portion of the print. Layer adhesion is great, so I'm pretty sure this should be printed with the cooling fan on a higher setting to compensate. I'm guessing this got too hot, curled up and caught the nozzle. I don't have a real ball for comparison, but this one weighed in at 281 grams. We gave this one a workout at the park too. I think it's perfectly acceptable for any type of throwing and catching. whether that be American or Australian football style, but I really don't think it's suitable for kicking. And again, the bounce feels a little off too. Oh, and trust me, it's definitely suitable for any running and tackling drills. He's completely fine, don't worry. One last quick test, I wanted to try and recreate a rubber handball. So I modeled this up in Onshape, but it's not really mathematically correct. However, just like the basketball, it does have a double wall structure with hollow sections in between. The original came in at 51 grams, and the printed airless version came in at only 40 grams. But despite this, it wasn't suitable for handball because it's so much harder than the rubber ball. It bounces okay, but this one was definitely a miss overall. However, as a proof of concept, I did print it on the much cheaper Bamboo Lab A1 with a 0.6mm nozzle. And I also used a regular PEI textured sheet with some glue stick. And this combination actually worked very well, proving you don't need to spend big money on all of the accessories BQ are suggesting. So 2 out of 3 for viable balls, but that doesn't mean you can just sell them without getting in trouble at least. You will notice on the download page for pretty much all of these balls that the license is marked as non-commercial use, and if we scroll up there's an additional note saying they're for personal use only, so we can't sell these balls without permission. However, it is possible to inquire and purchase a commercial license. That's exactly what I did, so here are some of the prices. Let's start with Party Lime, the creator of the basketball you've seen in this video. The deal they provide I think is extremely reasonable, $100 for a license to sell 1,000 prints. You can use any of the generations that they've designed, and they'll even customize the STL for you with a logo like they did for BQ. Then there's Make It Lab, who have basketballs as well as a soccer ball, and their licensing is purchased by joining up for Patreon. Again, for a very reasonable $5.50 per month, you get access to all of their models plus some exclusive perks. Finally, I contacted Overture 3D, but I have not heard back at the time of recording. The other question is whether Wilson cares that clones of their basketball are currently being sold, but as far as I can tell, the answer is no. The design of these free versions is probably different enough to avoid issues anyway. So let's move on to our costs, both in terms of money and time, for the basketball by Party Lime I printed in this video. And we're going to break these down across the whole manufacturing and distribution process. Up front, we need the PLA HR filament at $60 a kilo. However, each ball only needs 812 grams, so it's approximately $49 per ball. Even though we get 1,000, let's spread our licensing cost over 100 balls at $1 per ball. When we're printing, we will consume electricity, however this is going to be quite variable depending on where you live and whether you're using renewables. And we know the printing time for one of these balls is about 50 hours. Post-processing is free, but it will take up some of your time, maybe around half an hour. And wherever you're selling the ball might take a cut. For instance on Etsy that seems to be 6.5%, but that's of the sale price, not the cost price. Finally, postage will probably be passed on to the customer, but you will need to spend some time packaging the ball. Let's round up and say our costs are around $60 a ball, with 51 hours of time needed, but only 1 hour of that is hands-on time. So how much could we actually charge customers for this ball? Well, the BQ website is actually selling the pre-made balls in a choice of 4 colors for $129. However, the average person browsing Etsy or eBay probably wouldn't know this exists, so we could probably sell pretty close to this. How much someone would actually pay for it, I'm not sure, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section, as well as whether you think selling these for profit is actually viable. It just goes to show that profiting from the latest 3D printing trends can be a little complicated. But even if you don't want to sell them, I'd recommend printing one of these for yourself, as the designers really did a superb job. Thank you to them for their efforts, thank you to my son for helping me film this video, and thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy 3D printing for profit. G'day, it's Michael again. If you liked the video, then please click like. If you want to see more content like this in future, click subscribe and make sure you click on the bell to receive every notification. If you really want to support the channel and see exclusive content, become a patron. Visit my Patreon page. See you next time.